My name is Jamin Goecker. I'm an associate real estate broker in the state of Alaska. I am not going to lie, I don't particularly feel like doing this today, but I'm a professional, so we're going to do this market update looking at the residential, the condo, and the multifamily market, just kind of give you an idea for what's going on. Before we get started, do make sure you give this video a like, subscribe, do all the good stuff, and without further ado, let's go and jump into the real estate market update, looking first at the residential. Now, the first thing we see is that this time last year, there were 366 properties that were on the market. This year, 333. Now, it is a decline, and that's actually really in line with what we've seen for the inventory here in Anchorage for really the past couple of years at this point. You know the story. But really what caught my attention is how far this is in the grand scheme of things compared to a couple of years ago, even before the pandemic. Around the 2016, 2017, we're right around 960, pushing 1,000 houses that were available in Anchorage for the month of September. You can really start seeing how the inventory really has dropped so low, even compared to a couple of years ago where it was really low. Now it's even lower than that. So this is really low inventory. We'll talk about why that is in the summary. The next thing we want to look at is the number of properties that have actually sold. This time last year, there were 265 properties that sold. Now it's right around that 223. So less properties have sold in the month of September. And yes, that is historically lower than what we usually see. Usually we're a little bit closer to about that 260, maybe 270. So we are starting to see kind of a slowdown for number of properties that actually are closing. And that's not that big of a surprise though. You can only have a dip in the inventory so far before it starts showing up and the number of properties that have actually sold. The next thing we see is that the average sold price went from $457 this time year to date last year to $482 this year, which means we've actually seen about a 5.5% increase for the average sold price for all of Anchorage. Now, also, let's look a little bit closer here as well. If we look kind of pre-pandemic in 2019, we see that it was about $375,000. Now we're sitting right at about $482,000. So that gives you a little bit better of an idea by how much we've increased. You can see the chart there that it's really just kind of shot up, and that's really what happens when you have such low interest rates go on for quite a while. There's just going to be a run on the prices, and we'll talk about what the theories are as to why the average sold price continues to go up and up and up, even as the interest rates continue to go up as well. This is really baffling for a lot of people. All right, let's go and take a look and see what's going on in the condo market now. Now in the condo market, we see that this time last year there were 86, now there's 84. Not a big deal like year over year, but it's actually a really big deal once we kind of pan back a little bit and look at what it's been in the previous years. Because previous years, we're sitting closer about mid 400, pushing 500 around this time of year for September for condos. So you see that is just like fraction of the inventory that we usually have for the condo market that are available here in Anchorage. So there's reasons for that. We'll talk more about that in the summary though. The next thing we see is that the total number of condos that sold was 118 this time last year to 98 this year. So again, not too unpredictably, we did see a bit of a drawing back for the number of condos that were actually selling. That being said though, not nearly as much of a drastic cut as what we saw in the inventory though, because in the inventory, like I said, it was about a fraction of what we usually see for the active inventory. But now we see, even with that cut, it's actually right about in line with what we historically would see for the number of properties, condos that have sold in the market for this time of year. Because I mean, the past couple of years is about 126, 140, 118. Before that though, is about 87, 78, 93, 89, 95. So you see it's right about where it should be, even though the inventory is about a fraction of what it usually is. Now we see the average sold price for condos went from $244,000 to $271,000 year to date condos here in Anchorage. And this isn't too big of a surprise that we would see about that 11% increase. And the reason that we're seeing that is because interest rates go up, people start looking for more affordable options, and oh look, there's condos, and now condos, there's about a fraction available of what usually is. And so you start seeing the value of these condos go up much quicker. To give you an idea of how much quicker, prior to the pandemic, so looking at 2019, there was an increase of just about 1%. So hardly moving the needle really there at all. And this past year, today, it's gone up by 11%, which is the most it's done even during the pandemic. But the difference is during the pandemic, we were complaining about the low inventory then. Well, we're definitely complaining more so now for the single family houses, and the lack of inventory now is just pushing more and more of those buyers towards these condos. All right, let's go ahead and take a break here real quick. For those who've been watching for a little bit, you do know we have got an enormous mountain of resources for those of you who are considering moving here or people that are just trying to gather information to make the best decision for yourself. Well, we're adding a new tool to the tool belt for you. What we did is we actually created a step-by-step process to help you really define what it is you need to do as you're even considering moving up here to Alaska. And this is a tool that we created just to help you to stay organized and figure out what it is that you need to do. So do make sure you take advantage of that. Link for that is going to be in the description section down below. It's a downloadable PDF and you'll be able to use it as a way to keep yourself organized and to really help you define what it is that you need to get done as you're considering moving up here or deciding it's not for you. So do make sure you go take advantage of that. Let's go ahead and finish up today's market update looking at the multifamily market sector. Now, looking at the multifamily market, we see that this time last year we had 69 properties available on the market, and now it's up to 96. So we are in fact seeing an increase for the number of multifamily properties here in Anchorage, and that's interesting because we see that there's been an increase year over year, not a huge increase, so I'm not expecting like a huge market shift or anything in the near future, but we are seeing an increase for the number of multifamilies increasing a little bit here, really since July. So again, not huge numbers, but it is something to kind of keep an eye on. We're still historically very low for what we would usually see this time of year, because usually we're right around like the 200, maybe upper like 180, somewhere around there. And now we're still only at 96. So still an increase year over year, historically still pretty low though. All right, now the number of properties that have actually sold went from 27 this time last year to 31 this year. So a little bit of an increase in the number of properties that are available and a very small increase in the number of properties that are actually selling around this time of year. The next thing we see is the average sold price for multifamily properties went from about $509,000 this time last year to about $484,000 this year. So that's right, there's been approximately a 5% decrease in the average sold price for multifamily properties. Like I've said before, I really don't see a whole lot of value in the average sold price for multifamilies just because it incorporates everything from the duplex all the way up to the big commercial properties. So it's very hard to really gauge what it is that we're exactly looking at. But still, that is something that I definitely want to keep an eye on. The interest rates going up do have more of an impact on how investors are going to be evaluating properties than even what it is in residential. You think you're watching it very closely. An investor who has to be able to offset the cost of the mortgage and the taxes and the maintenance and all that with the rents that are coming in is going to be watching that interest rate a lot closer than primary homeowners. So I suspect we might see a decrease in what people can actually get for their multifamily. It might not just be that more duplexes sold this year than the previous year, but I don't know for certain. All right, let's go ahead and do our summary real quick here. So really the story for just about all the asset classes that we're looking at, with the exception of multifamily, is that we're really just seeing the results that happens when you have interest rates go up really high when you had really low interest rates before. Just about everyone has a really low interest rate on their property, probably in like the 2 or the 3 range. And when that happens, sellers are just not going to leave unless they absolutely have to, which has created a shortage when the interest rates went up because those sellers are just holding on to those properties for all they're worth and they're not letting them go unless they absolutely have to, which is creating kind of a gridlock for us in the real estate industry and why you see the inventory has just continued to go further and further and further down. And a lot of people are thinking, well, we're just going to wait till the interest rates go down and then we're going to jump in there and get after it. This is my concern though. If the interest rates suddenly drop down, then everyone's going to try to pile on right at the time where there's not a whole lot of inventory. And keep in mind, interest rates would have to go down probably around like 3-4%, I would say, to really incentivize a lot of these sellers to get off the properties they have with like 2 or 3% interest rates. And I just don't know if that's going to happen. I suspect it is going to go down at some point. We just don't know when. The concern is if it goes down when the inventory is so low that it just creates an absolute bloodbath. So for those of you who are out there looking, just know that right at the moment, while there's less competition, is probably going to be where you can find the best deal. And I know it doesn't seem that way, but when I was working in the industry during the COVID rush and everything that happened there with the real estate market, it was not unusual for us to see a property and go easily 10, 15, 20, 30, $40,000 over asking price, and then make all these concessions, and then add on top of that, a bunch of appraisal gaps for sometimes tens of thousands of dollars. And when we're in a market where there's not as much competition, there's less inventory, but there's less competition, you don't have to do that stuff, and that actually does give you the benefit of being able to negotiate a little bit more and not be in as much competition as you would be if everybody just jumped on at the same time. So for that reason, I'm recommending to people, hey, let's try to avoid that pain, because I've done it before. You can win, but nothing's cheap. When you're having to do it that way, that is definitely the dirty way to do it. Condos, kind of the same deal. As soon as the inventory for single family homes starts going away, everyone starts looking for other alternatives, and interest rates go up, and the condos are obviously a lot cheaper, and so people are going to be looking towards those, and there's not a whole lot of them, and that's why we see the average sold price going up. So this has been your market update for Anchorage. I sure hope it's been useful. If it has, as always, give this video a like, subscribe, reach out to me, let me know if you have questions, and we'll talk with you later.